start from the beginning. So as mentioned, this is just a brief refresher to remind everybody again of what we're trying to achieve with this specific document that has since been published. The agenda to quickly follow will just give some background around why we've put this specific paper together. What is disaster recovery trying to achieve? There's a template, a toolkit to help Pujaris, senior temple management to manage this better. And then we'll take any questions at the end. So to start off with, there's a beautiful story from Chaitanya Charamrit Madhya, chapter 4, verses 21 to 43. And Madhavendra Puri was in the forest, meditating and in prayer. And there was a beautiful exchange between him and, well, the Supreme Personality who guided him to a form of the deity that was hidden in the bushes. And the deity was Gopala, and he had said that when the area was attacked, the priests that were serving the deity form had to hide him in the jungle. And over this period, the deity had to suffer great difficulties, cold, etc., etc., and instructed Madhavendra Puri to take him out and have him installed. So even as recent as 500 years ago, the deities were subjected to all sorts of dangers and continue to be so, as we've seen. So here in Kali Yuga, there's all sorts of calamities. They could be natural or otherwise. And so we, within IDWM, have experienced some of this recently. And we put together a document that principally manages this. So that the template, the document is available on the website and also via email. And we are, available to just chat to if you need support on this. What are the recent experiences that we've had? Well, in Bangladesh, there were a lot of riots, social unrest. And there we saw, unfortunately, the Srila Prabhupada deity had been burnt. And then, of course, recently with the war in Europe, some of the deities had to be taken off site. There were natural disasters like floods in South Africa, and this resulted in the infrastructure being so badly inaccessible that basic necessities could not be taken to the deities. So there's all types of disasters. We've categorized them into either socio-political, geopolitical, climate change, socioeconomic conditions where you see a lot of inflation and food cannot be afforded, and then of course natural disasters as well. So what do we do to manage this? Well, effectively what we're trying to achieve is to get as many pujaris into the right mindset before the disaster happens. So if in your mind you're able to walk through what a disaster would entail, then when it actually happens, you're a lot more prepared. So this is what the document tries to do. It tries to pre-stimulate an environment where the deities are really under danger and what could possibly happen. Food shortages, power shortages, a lack of communication, because when a disaster does actually happen, it's very difficult for a person in charge to at that point decide what to do. But if there's some planning done beforehand, it makes it much easier to manage. So because there's so many possible outcomes and scenarios, the template, through a process of elimination, helps the user identify which disasters are most relevant to their yatra or temple or center, and then the frequency of when that could happen. So that helps a lot. Of course, if there is time, ongoing review and discussion about disasters or the template is always optimal. So the template, basically, the document, has some guidance. It speaks about who should be the stakeholders that are, sorry, let me just put the pointer options on here. Who are the stakeholders that should be identified within a yatra? It may not only be the pujaris, it may also involve maybe temple management, other senior devotees, or other critical members that can facilitate during a disaster. And then, of course, it gives guidelines around how the template should be completed and how often it should be reviewed. The template is broken up into a few sections. The first section, as I mentioned, through a process of elimination, helps identify whether you're prone to floods, fire, economic stress, social, political tension, etc. And then the second section, which is probably the most relevant, is what should you do in a disaster? Now, irrespective of the type of disaster that happens, it doesn't matter what disaster happens, it generally comes down to about 5 or 6 categories that is most important in serving the deities. Is there enough food? Is there enough water? Is there power? Is there a need to safeguard the deities and either hide them on site or remove them off site? And how does the communication work, especially if, some of the power is interrupted or the telecom lines are down? So the template seeks to provide guidance principally around that. And that for me, these two sections are probably the most important in the document and the template. So I'll just switch over to the document itself. Can everybody see a new presentation, a document?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hare Krishna. So the top half of the document I summarized in the slides, and then the actual template starts midway through the document from about page 6 onwards. And there's a little guidance around how to complete the template. So you could answer for the different questions, yes or no. What is the grading of the risk? If it's high risk, it's probably 75 to 100% chance of materializing. Medium is 50 to 74%. Low risk, less than 50%. So just some broad, guidelines. And then how frequent could the disaster happen? So less than a week's time, less than a month's time, less than 3 months' time. This is important, especially if there's a lot of tension or possible disasters that could affect the deities. So let's get into the template. The template, the first section is just helping all the pujaris understand what could go wrong specifically to their country, their city, their area. So this is a process of elimination. All the different types of disasters are categorized and then subcategorized on your left-hand side. So natural disasters such as flooding, wildfires, earthquakes, etc. Geopolitical scenarios such as civil protests, war invasion, terror attacks, etc. And there's another page with the rest of disasters. But essentially, you want to check whether it's a yes or no. So is it applicable or not? Is it a yes or is it a no? If you answered yes in the first set of blocks, then you'd probably want to ask yourself, okay, yes, we do have floods and we do have wildfires, but how risky is it? And in some cases, maybe flooding is very high risk, but wildfires, it has happened, but it's probably low risk. So then in your mind, you start to get a picture of, okay, these are the disasters and this is the main areas, the high risks that I need to focus on. And then what is the possibility of it happening? Well, actually, floods only happen once a year over April, May. It's a high flood season in certain countries. So that's when I need to worry. In other areas, flooding has been happening quite often. So we've experienced lots of floods every 3 to 6 months. And then once you've done that, you've now got a picture of what could go wrong. And then we move on to the principles of recovery planning. So as mentioned, it doesn't matter what the disaster is. You now have an idea of what could go wrong and when it could go wrong for your specific temple or center in a country. We have provided some guidance around what to do if there's water shortages. So to plan in advance is key. If you know you're going to have a disaster, try and keep some water on hand, speak to individuals to have storage containers, etc. If there's going to be power shortages, make sure you have enough gas or wood on hand, backup solutions, generators, etc. So the deities can continue to be served until everything goes back to normal. food shortages. If there is going to be some sort of problems, perhaps get some advanced food supplies and keep it on hand. If you have pujari staying in the temple, this is also very important, not only to have food for the deities, but also for the temple residents. And then just to quickly close off, what is very important is if the deities need to be hidden or to be taken off site, there are some guidelines around this, and I'm not going to get into the detail. You can read the document itself. The deities need to be kept safe. A room could be earmarked in advance where the deities could be hidden. And effectively, how do we keep the deity safe from being like in Bangladesh burnt, for example? And if you need to move the deities off site, there's some sensitivities that we need to keep in mind. We don't want the deities to get damaged, etc. So there are some guidance just to make sure that you have some perhaps storage containers, a person who can drive the deity safely, a route, for example, etc. So these are the principles, and I'll leave it at that. Again, just the last thing is, during a disaster, it's very difficult to communicate sometimes. So it's important that you have a good relationship with the municipality, with with police, with individuals that can actually help your temple center and getting the inmates out of sight or the deities. And just the last thing is make sure that you have somewhere written all the contact details of key people, like the police, the temple president, and any other key stakeholders. And I will leave it at that. Hare Krishna.